I voted no because this budget did not address what I think are some of the priorities of why I came down here to Olympia. Most importantly, to create jobs for constituents, as well as meet the need to increase our funding to K-12 education. The budget did put more money into K-12 education, but it did so by sweeping funds of most of their spare cash, and also, which are used incidentally for many very important purposes. A good example of this is sweeping of the fund of unclaimed lottery prize money, which is being used by our governor to help fund critical economic development projects, such as the Boeing Aerospace Center in Everett. We swept that money for K-12 education. We also, there's an education funding bill which sweeps permanently money from our Public Works Trust Fund, which actually funds critical infrastructure projects throughout our state to the tune of almost $200 million. So I was concerned that what we were doing with this budget, rather than trying to not both encourage jobs as well as K-Fund education, that we really were undermining the efforts of our budget to help create jobs in our economy as well. And the basic reason for that was that the bipartisan budget in the Senate felt that it could develop $1 billion extra for funding of K-12 education with no new revenue enhancements, no closure of loopholes, no effort to find new revenue. And to me, because of that, they got involved in sweeping funds that are critical for building jobs in this state. And for that reason, I voted no. By virtue of sweeping these funds for our operating budget, we took about $400 million out of our capital budget. Our capital budget is a budget that is basically a job producer in our economy. Last year, we had great praise for the capital budget that we produced because it helped bring construction jobs to our communities. This year, we took $400 million out of that capital budget to help fund this need for K-12 education. Now, K-12 education is important and we need to fund that, but we didn't need to take away all that money from those accounts that help create jobs in our economy. And for that reason, I voted no. The capital budget was so lean that instead of seeing many of the projects that are important to our state, and I'll give you one important issue is the funding for our Pierce County Skills Center. This Skills Center is developed for our K-12 system. It allows young people to enter into vocational training programs which allow them to develop skills for aircraft manufacture and other suppliers of Boeing. That Skills Center is currently needing additional dollars for about $11 million to expand its operation in our county, and the budget writers for capital were unable to get that money because we swept so much of that money into the operating budget. This is not good budget making. We need to recognize our need to fund K-12 education, but we shouldn't do it at the expense of those programs which help young people find jobs in our economy, as well as those programs which create jobs in our community by putting to work construction workers on many, many projects. For that reason, I was a no on the operating budget, and I will be a no on the capital budget. The capital budget writers did decide to create a new section in the capital budget for stormwater projects, and I was very pleased to see that we got $4 million for a critical stormwater project in the 29th district, which incidentally will also help water quality at Wapato Lake. Again, jobs. This is an important project. It's a land reclamation of a gravel pit so that it can be more effectively used for stormwater in South Tacoma. So that's a plus in the capital budget. This project's very important to our district, but there were equally other projects that weren't funded that I had asked for. One is the continuation of investments in the Star Center, which is a critical recreational center in South Tacoma. And another is trying to get some little planning money to help us develop another Boys and Girls Club, another recreation center in East Tacoma. Both of those items actually were funded in the House budget. So I'm hoping as we move along here that we'll see additional dollars for those critical projects for families in our district. Well, the House budget actually did not find revenue by basically sweeping the job-creating counts of our budget. And so I'm very hopeful that as we move into negotiation with the House, that the Senate budget writers will come closer to the House budget. The House budget is stronger on jobs and certainly did fund, incidentally, the Pierce County Skills Center project, which is critical in our district. It also incidentally funds the efforts here to build a new community center on the east side of Tacoma. These are projects that help improve not only the quality of life in our district, but also help build jobs. I'm hoping that we get closer to the House budget as this process develops. They could do that because they were not frightened about closing some of these tax loopholes in our tax code. They find additional revenue through closing these loopholes. They find additional revenue by addressing some of the issues around the estate tax, issues around the use of revenues that we currently are using in our budget. And I think where we need to recognize to find $1 billion, I'm going to stop here. I asked the constituents, okay, I asked the constituents to ask themselves this simple question. How do we find $1 billion for K-12 education within our existing budget? And in the Senate, they attempted to do that without adding any revenue sources to the budget. It ended up hurting young families, hurting kids, and not driving jobs in our economy. The House budget recognizes the need that it must include additional revenue. And by doing so, they don't hurt kids, they don't hurt families, and they help drive more jobs for our district and for our state.